World War II ended in 1945. The US and USSR emerged as superpowers. They were allies against Nazi Germany, but tensions quickly grew. These two nations had very different beliefs. The US believed in capitalism and democracy. Individuals had freedoms and rights. The USSR followed communism. The government controlled everything, aiming for equality. This clash of ideas defined the Cold War. The Cold War wasn't a traditional war. There were no large-scale battles. Instead, it was a war of threats, propaganda, and proxy wars. Both sides competed for global influence. They wanted other countries to adopt their ideology. The Cold War created a divided world. Europe was split by the Iron Curtain. This imaginary line separated the capitalist West from the communist East. Fear and suspicion dominated this era. The world watched, waiting to see which side would prevail. The US championed capitalism. It emphasized individual freedom, free markets, and democracy. People had the right to own property and businesses. Success was based on hard work and competition. The USSR promoted communism. It aimed to create a classless society. The government controlled all aspects of the economy. Wealth was meant to be distributed equally among the people. Each side believed its system was superior. The US saw communism as oppressive and a threat to freedom. The USSR saw capitalism as exploitative, creating inequalities. This fundamental disagreement fueled the Cold War. Propaganda played a key role. The US highlighted the successes of capitalism and the failures of communism. They portrayed the USSR as an evil empire. The USSR emphasized the inequalities of capitalism and the supposed benefits of communism. Both sides tried to win the hearts and minds of people worldwide. The Cold War was full of tense moments, but the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. The USSR placed nuclear missiles in Cuba, just 90 miles from Florida. The US saw this as a direct threat. President John F. Kennedy imposed a naval blockade on Cuba. For 13 days, the world held its breath. Negotiations were tense, with the possibility of nuclear war looming. Finally, a deal was struck. The USSR agreed to remove the missiles from Cuba. In return, the US secretly agreed to remove missiles from Turkey. The Cuban Missile Crisis showed the terrifying stakes of the Cold War. The arms race was another defining feature. Both sides built up massive arsenals of nuclear weapons. Each new development fueled fear and mistrust. The threat of mutually assured destruction hung over the world. The Cold War had a profound impact on people's lives. In the West, there was fear of communism and nuclear war. Duck and cover drills became routine. People built bomb shelters in their backyards. In the East, people lived under communist rule. They had limited freedoms and faced government surveillance. Travel to the West was restricted. Dissent was often met with harsh consequences. The Cold War also fueled proxy wars around the globe. The US and USSR supported opposing sides in conflicts in Korea, Vietnam, and Afghanistan. These wars caused immense suffering and instability. Despite the tensions, there were also efforts at détente, or easing of tensions. Cultural exchanges and arms control treaties were attempts to find common ground, but the underlying mistrust remained.